So, you want a new landmark for your city? Well, there's one tried and tested structure that's turned heads everywhere from London to Singapore. The Ferris wheel. Okay, but maybe you want something that stands out a bit more. Well, how about you take that wheel and remove the spokes? Still not cool enough? Okay. How about you build two wheels and twist them together? That sounds a bit nuts, right? Well, it's what's just been announced in the South Korean capital of Seoul. This is the Seoul Twin Eye, a 180-metre double helix spokeless Ferris wheel announced by the Seoul Metropolitan government back in January. Now, city landmarks come in all shapes and sizes, but we've never seen anything like this, and it has some insane engineering that we just can't wait to get to the bottom of. But there's more to this design than meets the eye, and its unique shape is not just engineers showing off. In fact, there's a good reason why it looks like this and not like this. And there's a very good reason why it looks absolutely nothing like this. This is a quite unbelievable story that includes a 19th century clock, the 2002 World Cup, and a lawsuit with one of Korea's most famous architects. Close your eyes and think of Paris. What comes to mind? Chances are you thought of the Eiffel Tower. This time, let's try Sydney. I'll bet you another shrimp on the Barbie that the Sydney Opera House popped into your head. Okay, close your eyes and think of Seoul. Anything? Now, don't get us wrong, we love Korea. It's got a strong economy, great food, and brilliant films. Although, shame about the music. But for all its cultural clout, its capital city is lacking the kind of iconic landmark that secures it a place in the big league. And that's what's behind the decision to build the Seoul Twin Eye. But there's another part of this story which, unless you've got a keen eye for architectural controversies, you might have just missed. But before we get to that, this is a construction channel first and foremost, so how on earth do you build a spokeless Ferris wheel? Good news, we asked someone who designs them.
Conventional Ferris wheel works as a bicycle wheel, where the other one is more related to the amusement park rides, where the cabins go around the fixed structure. So what you have is in the middle you have a fixed rim, then the fixed rim is connected to the foundation, so that is your fixed structure. And then around the fixed structure you have rotating ring, which is a daisy chain. In other words, a daisy chain is made of a number of bogies that are connected into a chain. So it's all interlinked.
The gondolas on a spokeless wheel sit on wheel sets which are all linked together similar to a train. These are independently powered and collectively drive the chain, but the wheel they sit on remains still. This design is about evolution, not revolution. The first spokeless wheel opened in Tokyo back in 2003, but they're still pretty rare, although that's not stopped designers from pushing the limits. In 2017, the title of the world's tallest spokeless Ferris wheel was handed to this structure in China. At 145 metres, it's almost 3 times the size of Tokyo's Big O and comfortably taller than the London Eye. It was built to give the city of Weifeng an iconic landmark, which brings us back full circle to Seoul. To pick a world-class design, an international competition was launched, attracting submissions from 181 teams. Only this isn't what gave us the Twin Eye. This actually happened way back in 1999. With the new millennium just around the corner and South Korea acting as joint host of the 2002 FIFA World Cup, the Korean government launched a competition to create a new symbol for the nation. The winning entry was this, the Seoul Ring, from the relatively unknown team of architect Eunseok and studio Opus architects. They put forward a truly breathtaking monument to the new millennium, an enormous freestanding circle standing at one end of Nagido Peace Park, the centrepiece of the 2002 World Cup in Seoul. It would have been the first building of its type anywhere in the world, and at 200 metres high, taller than anything similar today. The Seoul Ring contained an observation deck at the top and crucially featured gondolas on its inside, creating what would be the world's first spokeless Ferris wheel. But shortly after it was announced as the winner in 2000, questions began to be asked about the feasibility of its design. A spokeless wheel faces a lot of engineering challenges, but one of the biggest is caused by the stress placed on the overall structure by the way the pods are linked together.
So The main problem, gravity load problem with the fixed frames is how the fixed frame overlies. So if you have a daisy chain on your arm, basically what you have is majority of the load sitting on the arm and then the daisy chain hanging underneath your arm. So it's exactly the same principle on the fixed frame wheels. You have a fixed frame, which is your fixed structure, supporting a ring of daisy chains, which means that the majority of the load, the gravity load, sits on top of the fixed frame. And then from the fixed frame, you need to move that load down into foundation.
Now, a common way this is fixed is by building a support to reinforce the middle of the wheel. This effectively makes the structure work like an arch, which is capable of bearing the weight of the pods without becoming deformed. This and other problems on the Seoul ring were eventually solved, but not before the budget for the project had nearly doubled. Citing cost overruns and public opinion, the minister in charge, Kim Han-gil, scrapped the project in March 2001. But how do we get from there to the world's first double helix wheel? Well, fast forward to 2023, the local Seoul government announced plans to build a new city landmark and revealed this, the Seoul Ring Zero, which bears more than just a passing resemblance to the Seoul Ring and was even planned for a site a kilometre away from the original. This is where things start to really spin out of control, so let's try and do this as simply as possible. It took the South Korean government 9 years and a lawsuit to pay the architects for their work on the cancelled 2001 wheel. Since then, one of its designers, Lee Eunseok, has risen to industry fame and never let go of his dream to build the Seoul Ring. So, when the government announced the Seoul Ring Zero in March 2023, the row over the original design was reignited. Within a week, the Korea Architects Institute released a statement accusing the Seoul government of plagiarism. The government rejected this, saying many designs were looked at for inspiration and that the basic shape was in the public domain. Cue months of very public back and forth between the original designers and the mayor of Seoul. At one point, the mayor claimed to have invited the designers to work on the Seoul Ring Zero, but this claim is disputed by Lee and Opus. Meanwhile, Lee was still fighting to complete his original design of the Seoul Ring, but to no avail. Somewhere in late 2023, the Seoul Ring Zero design was dropped, and then in December 2023, the government announced the Seoul Twin Eye, which it would build with another architecture firm, UNStudio. All of this brings us up to today, and the third iteration of Seoul's dramatic quest to build a giant wheel. We reached out to Lee Eunseok for comments. He told us that on hearing Mayor Oh's intention to build a new wheel for Seoul, he visited the chief architect of the Seoul government and proposed his original design. He was promised this would be presented to Mayor Oh, but didn't hear anything until the Seoul Ring Zero was announced. He added, "This issue could be viewed by the international architectural community as a significant plagiarism case initiated by a public institution. I firmly believe that respecting intellectual property rights and giving proper attribution are crucial for upholding the integrity and reputation of all parties involved in the architectural and creative fields." In response, the Seoul Metropolitan government told us that their plans to build a new landmark date back to August 2022, and Mayor Oh had proposed the idea of a spokeless wheel. They say they considered many existing wheels like the Tokyo Big O and acknowledged consulting with Lee over his Millennium Gate design as part of the development process. They reject the accusation of plagiarism, stating that the Seoul Ring Zero was created as an example to provide a general direction for the Seoul Ring, whose specific form will be determined through proposals in the future. Now, while it might seem implausible, this isn't actually the first time that a wheel designer has been accused of plagiarism. In fact, it's an accusation that's been flying around since they were first invented. The original Ferris wheel was built in Chicago in 1893 by engineer George Washington Ferris. But shortly after his ride opened, he was sued by William Summers, who claimed Ferris had copied his patented observation roundabout which he built the year before. Ferris's case wasn't helped when he admitted to having come up with the idea when actually riding Summers' wheel. Summers won the lawsuit, but it was Ferris's name that stuck, and the rest is history. But what about that 17th century clock I mentioned? Well, when the Twin Eye was announced, a press release revealed the inspiration for the new landmark came from this, an antique Korean astrological clock dating from 1669. Featuring spinning rings which do clearly resemble the Twin Eye. However, no acknowledgement was made of the previous designs, but maybe the radical redesign may contain a nod to the inspiration behind the inspiration. Development work on the Twin Eye is ongoing, so there may be a few more twists in this tale before anything gets built. Seoul might be a city in search of a landmark, but for now it might have to settle for a monumental row. Don't forget that we're inspiring the next generation of builders through our investment into BrickBorrow, a fantastic LEGO subscription service. You can learn more and get started today over at brickborrow.com. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to take a spin through the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M.